I grew up in a household that was very stressful and chaotic, and there wasn't stability.
So did my kids, by the way.
Right. And you're like the guy, right?
But I wasn't the guy then.
You weren't the guy then.
Yeah.
So your kids had some traumas that they had to face because of you and their parents.
It's not even a matter of skills learning. It's deeper than that. Because you don't have to teach any one-day-old baby how to express their emotions, do you?
No.
If they're sad, lonely, do you hear about it? If they're hungry or uncomfortable, do you hear about it? Of course you do. There's nothing to teach. There's a very famous Canadian psychologist. I don't know if he's been on your program, but he says that an angry child should be made to sit by themselves until they come back to normal.
Interesting.
In other words, anger in a 2-year-old is not normal. And we have to socialize it out of them. Now,
Interesting.
There's nothing more natural than an angry 2-year-old.
There's nothing more natural than
Yeah. They get frustrated, you know.
Right.
They want a cookie. They get a cookie before
they don't get what they want.
Yeah, they want a cookie. You know, they want a cookie before dinner. And if you're a good parent, you're not going to give them a cookie before dinner.
Right.
So
when does you teach, or when does someone learn how to not express anger every 10 minutes, though?
Well, here's the point. If that 2-year-old then starts screaming or throwing a tantrum, or getting angry, if you say time out and you're not going to be with them, now you're presenting the child with a tragic dilemma. I can have my authentic emotion, or I can have my relationship with my parent on whom my life depends. So I can be authentic, or I can be attached in a relationship, but I can't have both.
Interesting.
Now, children,
because if I'm not authentic, or if I'm authentic, then I'm going to be alone.
Exactly.
I'm going to be on timeout or whatever.
And to the child, the timeout is life-threatening.
Because you might be alone forever, right?
The child doesn't know that, you see.
Yeah.
So basically, you're threatening the child with depriving them of their greatest need, which is the connection with you.
Yeah, love.
Yeah, the love, yeah. Now...
But isn't there a point, though, if you're a 21-year-old man now and you're, screaming every 10 minutes because you don't get the cookie?
But that's not the answer.
Right.
The answer is when they're screaming, to pick them up. You're angry at daddy, aren't you? You really wish you had that cookie. Yeah. Oh, I get it. And then the child relaxes and the anger moves through them. And you know what they learn? That anger is just something that moves through you. You can let go of it. If you don't see the child, don't accept the child's emotion, they're going to have to repress it.
You have to stuff it.
What's another word for stuffing? It's pushing down.
Trap it, yeah.
Well, pushing down. What's another word for pushing down? Depressing. Where does depression come from? It's not this disease. Depression comes from having had to push down your emotions.
Wow.
Literally, you had to push down your emotions. In other words, why did you have to push down your emotions? To stay connected to your parents. In other words, it was a coping mechanism. And what I'm saying is that a lot of illness, whether of the mind or the body or both, comes from coping mechanisms. There are normal coping mechanisms in response to an abnormal situation. It's not normal for a child to be banished from the presence of the parent. If you look at indigenous people, they carry their kids everywhere. The kids are always with the parents. And the pilgrims, when they arrived in North America, they're very upset with how the natives reared their children. You know why? Because the indigenous people did not hit their kids.
They didn't hit their kids.
They didn't hit their kids. And the Christians couldn't understand this.
Why they didn't, create obedience with them, right?
Yeah.
So what do they do?
They nourish them. And when you nourish a child, see, nature has got a natural agenda, is that you should grow up to be a self-regulated adult in connection with yourself and with other people. That's nature's agenda. It's like nature has an agenda for an acorn to become an oak tree. But an acorn doesn't spontaneously become an oak tree. It has to have the right conditions. So it's not a question of teaching the oak tree, the acorn to be an oak tree. Just give it the nourishment and the sunlight and the earth and the irrigation that it needs. Its nature is to become an oak tree.
Right.
The nature of human beings is to become self-regulated, socially responsible creatures. That's how we evolved. Given the right conditions, that will happen. So it's not a question of teaching all these things. Yeah, there's some teaching involved. Mostly it's the question of meeting children's needs, giving them the right conditions, And then they will develop self-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
They learn it because you're self-regulated, so they're watching you.
You're not reactive and
You're
explosive
not
and
reactive.
screaming.
You realize, oh, I'm angry. Okay, I'm angry. But you're not screaming at the kid. So in the right environment, these traits spontaneously evolve or develop in a human being. So our society is always about how do we teach these skills and no skills. Well, teaching is important, but more important is the child's spontaneous growth, given the right environment. And what I'm saying about this toxic culture, we don't give our kids the right environment.
Yeah, I mean, you hear the statistic that 50% of marriages turn into divorce these days. And also, probably, I think when I had Esther Perel on, I was like, how many of the 50% that are married are actually happy? It's a very small percentage too.
Well,
and
so I've had a marriage that we've had a lot of unhappiness. We've been married 53 years now.
53?
Yeah, we're very happy together.
Now you are.
But it took us a lot of work, a lot of commitment. But here's what I want to say. There's two ways you can tell if a marriage is unhappy. One is you can ask the parents. The other is you can measure the cortisol level of the children.
Oh, wow.
Because the parents' stresses affect the physiology of the child.
Oh man, my cortisol must have been off the charts when I was all of us children. Yeah,
it probably would have been. And so in this society, and this is not the fault of individual parents, like it begins in the uterus. Actually, already stresses on the pregnant woman will affect the physiology of the child.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now, in this society, so many pregnant women are so stressed. In the States particularly.
You're talking about more emotional stress because there's physical stress of like the body's expanding and growing and aches and pains, but the emotional stress. Right?
I mean the emotional stress of having to
the nervous system
perform
stress.
on the job or being in a difficult relationship. In one of the chapters in the book I talk about, it begins with the diary of my wife, who was writing it when she was pregnant with one of our children, about how unhappy she was. And she's talking to the infant saying, please don't take this stress personally. And she wrote that, and I quoted it in The Myth of Normal. And she knew what I didn't know. And no, she was unhappy because of our relationship.
She was unhappy because of the relationship.
She was unhappy because of what was going on in her relationship with me, being a workaholic doctor.
Not being there, or not being available emotionally. Or
Exactly. And even blaming her, for how I was feeling.
Wow.
So she's talking to this infant inside her, and that's how I opened one of the chapters. So already in the uterus, these stresses starts happening. A lot of evidence for that scientifically, brain scans, blood work, all kinds of stuff. Then there's labor, which in our society is very often mechanical and emotionally very difficult. And in the United States, 25% of women have to go back to work within 2 weeks of giving birth. Now, that infant is meant to be with the mother for at least 9 months, I would say years, but at least 9 months. That infant is abandoned at 2 weeks. That's how they experience it.
Oh, man.
Even if they're looked after by
someone
else, but the infant needs the mother's body.
Yeah, my mom was working probably pretty fast after each one of us were born. Had to go back to work and
Yeah, and I'm not blaming the women.
Right.
They have no choice.
Yes.
I'm saying, but this society puts those stresses on women. It then doesn't support them through the pregnancy. Then it puts a lot, and not only that, we didn't grow up in individual, isolated nuclear families, did we? We evolved in small band hunter-gatherer groups where people supported each other, where children were with adults all day, where adults collaborated. They had to, otherwise they wouldn't have survived.
Right.
So that's where our nature actually evolved. So when you get this society which tells you that people are by nature selfish and aggressive and competitive, which isolates mothers in separate homes, where the community is more and more, there's lots of work done by sociologists and others in the States about how communities are breaking down. There was that book, Bowling Alone, some years ago, 20 years ago now, about the breakdown of community, so that people are not getting support, and that means they're stressed.
And the mothers are doing it all on their own.
Exactly.
Right. But they're also expecting the husband to, work and also be at home, as opposed to reaching out to peers or family or friends. And
Exactly. So it's a very unnatural culture, and no wonder so many kids are getting diagnosed. And with ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder or depression, there's an article in the New Yorker a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, also in the New York Times, I think, about the rising rate of childhood and adolescent suicides in the U.S. It's mysterious. It's not mysterious. These kids are no longer having their developmental needs met. They feel alone and desperate and scared.
Mm-hmm. And then drug use is on the rise, and
all that
addiction and
that's right.
suicide.
There's nothing mysterious about it if you look at the cultural setting. It's only mysterious if we think we're dealing with isolated mental health issues or isolated physiological issues. But when you see the connections, nothing mysterious.
The things that are considered normal in society are not at all normal from the point of view of human life and human needs. The addictions that people develop are actually normal responses to an abnormal situation.
Dr. Maté is a world-renowned physician, best-selling author whose work dives deep